Hi, I'm Dan Hodges, CEO of COMSovereign. Thanks for taking the time to run through this investor presentation with me. I'd like to start on slide 3 and get right to it if you don't mind. Slide 3 covers the history or the nascent beginnings of COMSovereign. And what we have there is a description of how myself and John Howell, my business partner, decided about 2.5 years ago that there was a coming requirement for US based companies that could do 4G and 5G infrastructure end to end. All we saw at the moment were the big three: Ericsson, Nokia, Huawei, all foreign based companies, all providing some sense of security issue to the United States. So we determined at that time that we were going to research, negotiate, acquire every piece necessary for a complete infrastructure. And that's what's happened. It's COMSovereign Holding Company. It is a holding company, but the 8 subsidiaries underlying it right now don't operate as separate subsidiaries. They operate as a very seamless organization put together and managed by some of the most senior people that you can imagine. Let's go ahead and press to slide 4. The promise of 5G. 5G has been a buzzword. Most people think that if you could hear 5G, it's worth investing in because that's what's coming. The problem is what people don't realize that all the promises of 5G require some advanced technologies and some methodologies that to date still haven't been fully developed. In fact, the standards for 5G aren't set until they believe now, December 2021. That being said, a lot of companies have made claims that they have the largest 5G infrastructure, and those are somewhat misleading, I believe. That's not quite true. There are some high frequency radios that give you more data or faster data, but the infrastructure itself is certainly not in existence right now. That's not to say that it's not being developed and built out, but it doesn't operate yet. What then should an investor look at? Investors should look at what happens in the meantime until 5G is realized permanently. You need to look at a company that has the ability of doing 4G LTE Advanced network systems, because those are an important leg of the table on which 5G will sit. But 5G is not just a layer on top of 4G, it's a completely different organism. So the smart investor will look at, for the next several years, 4G is actually going to be more of the sales and more of the revenue base for companies in telecom than 5G. That crossover doesn't occur for 5G expenditures until about 2024, according to most analysts. So look for that company that can do both: 4G LTE Advanced now, 5G in the future, or in the very near term, such as COMSovereign. Let's go ahead to slide 7. I call that my gee whiz slide. Slide 7 is just to show you the subsidiaries that we have and how they operate together in more of a visual fashion. Slide 8 is one that is important to understand. Most of our customer base has come from our backhaul provider within our company called DragonWave. So there's over 700 companies that exist around the world, including every major telecom provider. Most of the divisions within the federal government of the United States have used DragonWave. In fact, it's number 2 in the United States right now for telecom backhaul. So imagine a company been in business 20 years, number 2 in the United States, has over $1 billion of equipment installed in networks in over 100 countries around the world right now. And that equipment is becoming obsolete in its performance as the years roll by. Just in the last several months, we've spoken to a portion of our customer base, and there's over $65 million in equipment that needs to be purchased from DragonWave over the next near term. I'll define as about 12 months. That's only from some of the customer base. So DragonWave will operate as our vertical sales channel. In DragonWave, it's always been a company of firsts. It had the first packet radio. It had the first fully outdoor radio. It is carrier grade, carrier class. Many of the other backhaul providers say they are not. At one time, we were a preferred provider to Sprint, now T-Mobile. So you're going to find that DragonWave is top-notch equipment, platinum grade. It's got upgrades coming into its Harmony line of radios right now that are second to none. They'll outperform every other radio that we know of coming into play for telecom backhaul. and yet will also be the offering channel for most of the other items within telecom for us, for industry. Every time you have a radio installation, whether it's a backhaul radio, which goes from tower to tower, or it's point-to-point microwave communication, or you have a front edge radio, which are those radios which talk to your devices, your mobile devices. Anytime you have those, you're going to have a mounting place for it, whether it be on a cell tower or a building. What you're going to find, though, every major mobile carrier right now has a committee or a division that is looking to do rapid deployable telecom networks. And that is what drone is about. We looked very long and hard and found a tethered aerostat and hex rotor application. Why is that important? I'll tell you. If you were to have the telecom infrastructure, wireless telecom infrastructure, that is, for cities such as Phoenix, would go completely down, completely destroyed, EMP or power loss or any of those. What we provide is the ability to stand up an entire 4G LTE Advanced network in a matter of hours, which would normally take years to build out. We could do in hours with drone and our radios attached. That's very significant. I'd like to go to slide 11. In DuraPower, anytime you have a mounting and a radio, you have to have reliability to that. And that, first of all, starts with power systems. If the power is cut, your network must not go down. And that's why we have backup power supplies at each radio mounting. Before, you had Panasonic, Fujitsu, Hitachi, all foreign companies providing these backup power supply systems. In fact, they're the most prevalent as we speak. What we've done is researched, acquired EnduraPower. It was one of the world's most prominent battery management systems with artificial intelligence algorithms into it. That means it operates very, very high tech. It can actually do a predictive analysis of failure rates and things of that nature, as well as monitoring the battery. Those will be out and offered, of course, by EnduraPower and DragonWave into the infrastructures very quickly. There are two companies that are disruptive technology companies. One is Lexstrom, the other one is VIO, and I'll address VIO towards the end. I address Lexstrom here because it's important to understand what it is. This technology R&D company, Lexstrom, is in-band full duplex. That means it's 100% improvement in efficiency over any other wireless methodology of transmission. What do I mean by that? Most radios operate what they call time division or frequency division. And without getting too geeky on you, suffice to say the radio, either the radio pair, one talks, the other listens, and then the one talking shuts up and listens to the other one. That's called time division. Frequency division is where you take the spectrum that the telecom company owns. If it's that much spectrum, we're going to use this much for transmission and this much for receipt. That's called frequency division. In either case, you're only using your spectrum at 50% efficiency. What Lexstrom does is it allows simultaneous transmission and receipt over the entire spectrum. That's 100%. And that's a very unique capability. There are others who claim full duplex, but they don't operate in telecom bandwidths in band. So Lexstrom is extremely important as we get into the 5G evolution of what we call integrated access and backhaul radios, meaning all those access radios on the front edge that are going to be proliferated, not 10 times, 100 times more radios in urban areas. Those have to communicate with your radio. In order to do that, they either have to time division or frequency division, both with your handset and then with each other to get the signals back to a node where it can go into fiber. That's extremely inefficient. When you think of it that way, that there are two virtual radios inside each of those, if you don't have in-band full duplex, you're going to be 1/4 as efficient as you could be. That's why it's so important and why we believe this technology makes us a leader. Let's go to the next slide. Virtual network communications. This is just an incredibly advanced technology company. If you look at the bottom right of the slide, you'll see something called vCore. A nightmare scenario for Huawei, Nokia, and Ericsson would be if we displace 75% of the equipment that they sell into infrastructures. That would be a nightmare scenario for them. That's what that vCore does. It's taken 3 of the major devices, virtualized them, and put them into something the size of a credit card. In fact, if you look at that, slide, right above it is a backpack we call RAID. That vCore into the RAID device, along with what's called an eNode B, which is a front edge radio, and a battery, makes that backpack able to create a bubble 6-mile radius around the wearer with a push of a button. 3 minutes later, it's an LTE Advanced network. That means that your Apple phones, your Androids, every standardized device can operate and communicate, not just voice, but text, video messaging, you name it. That's very advanced. People that say that we are behind China, that we are behind the Europeans in technology are just incorrect. They're mistaken. In fact, if you look to the left of that vCore, you'll see another device called the Featherlight. That's a 2.25-pound entire network. Radio, IMS, EPC, everything. We run that up on one of the drone systems, and that's what provides up to a 60-mile range, depending on power, for phone users. So you can see my claim about being able to stand up an entire LTE Advanced network, where it comes from, where it stems from. So you'll find that virtual network communications is the front edge, that edge that talks to every other radio device in a 5G network or 4G. This is important to understand what supply chain means to a company. You've no doubt heard over the last 18 months about a coming issue of having people's supply chain or their companies having supply chains that are outside the US, such as China, Taiwan, other locations. The issue with that is not just time, but cost, but moreover, security. How do we ensure that we have a supply chain in order to manufacture devices and deliver devices that we sell if we don't control that supply chain? Well, we saw that coming. We negotiated the purchase of a Colorado Springs-based entity and now have our own plastics and metal supply chain. We don't have to rely on anyone else. What does this mean? It's about a 45% cost reduction average for our companies across the board. It also means just-in-time supply chain. And if you've seen financials with bloated inventories, you understand what that means. Just-in-time supply chain means, for instance, our battery company, where it would have taken 6 months to get product because it has to give an engineering file, a mold, metal mold needs to be made, and then in plastic injection molding machines then stamp out things, and then that ships from overseas. That takes sometimes up to 6 months. We can do that entire process now in-house in 2 weeks at a 45% cost reduction average. And we don't have to have any minimum purchases because we own the molds, we own the machines. Simple. This is the second company that is R&D and is extremely disruptive. And I want you to understand, VIO is silicon photonics, which is another word for geek speak for using optics within the telecommunications or computing environments. The holdup right now, according to Amazon Web Services, Google, Facebook, almost any company that has data centers, it's admitted that the stovepipe that's limiting the speed and the data throughput is getting in and out of fiber. You can imagine coming from a radio with electronics, trying to take that modulation and those data bits and put them into a light form so it can be transmitted via light. That's what the problem is. Well, VIO has actually solved this issue. In about 18 to 24 months, I believe you're going to see VIO become one of the most valuable companies in America in technology. And that's a big claim. But why I say that is VIO has delivered in its both its simulations and its experiments a capability of doing throughput that is orders of magnitude higher than the current state of the art. And this is not fly-by-night. These are top-notch scientists. Dr. C.K. Sun, who sold his last company to Cisco, is our CTO. Dr. Robert Wellstand, formerly with Qualcomm, brilliant men. Dr. Rajat Sharma, just fantastic individuals that have come up with this technology that is going to rock the markets. I just wanted to briefly discuss the markets now that we talked about them. We address, for 2020 anyways, a $1.2 trillion market for all our subsidiaries at about a CAGR of almost 17%. The annual growth rate, 17%. That's fantastic. We know we're in the right markets. We know we have the right technology. We know we have the right management team. Let's go real quick to intellectual property on slide 18, and you'll find that right now we have 75 patents granted, over 100 patents total if you want to count those in pending status or in various stages of filing. We're looking at one additional patent portfolio right now, which would add 60 patents to us, including a third of them being in 5G, but I'll discuss that at a later time when it's publicly available. Slide 19, just a quick gee-whiz slide again on network participation and where you're going to find our various subsidiaries fitting into the network. I'm going to briefly spend just a brief minute on this, because I want you to see, and in the column under carrier grade technologies, you're going to see that IAB that I discussed. That will be the most prolific radio in 5G, bar none. There's going to be millions, indeed tens of millions of those sold into urban environments. Those are the ones that require, as I mentioned, the in-band full duplex of Lexstrom. We believe we're going to have our first prototype of the IAB radio out in about 8 to 9 months and available for commercial sale, fully accredited in about 1 year. That's an incredible time frame, especially when the standards aren't going to be fully set until next December. That means these radios are going to be very flexible. They're going to be extreme high efficiency. And if you want to know what IAB means, Google it. At Google Verizon, IAB, Google AT&T, IAB, you're going to get their statements on them. Don't take my word for it. Now I'd like to cover just in the quickest terms, slides 21 through 24. And those are the management team members just at the COMSovereign Holding Corp level. We have a world-class team of directors and officers. Dr. Dustin McIntyre, our CTO, ran Silver Bullet Technology. James Marks, we call him Spider, who's a retired 2-star general, has been a contributing military analyst to CNN, extremely bright entrepreneur himself, with some wonderful accolades in his career. Richard Berman, Director of the Year in 2012 in New York, fantastic. Brent Davies, our director that has audited well over 200 public companies, professional witness, to the Treasury Department, the SEC, brilliant CPA. He is our audit committee chair, as a matter of fact. And then John Howell and myself. John and I are the founders. We're the ones that put this company together, negotiated it together, and it's a very tight brotherhood between John and myself and each of these directors. That's just at the COMSovereign level. If you go to the subsidiary level, it's amazing. We have people that have no business being in startups like we are as a holding company. You have Dr. C.K. Sun from VIO, as I mentioned, a very renowned silicon photonics engineer. We have Dr. Sergey Belyarov from EnduroPower. We have Bob Hopkins, whom we recruited away from Sprint, who led Sprint in its microwave backhaul deployments. We have Mohan Tomasetti of Virtual Netcom. We have Hans Amel, formerly of Ericsson and Dun & Bradstreet, is the CEO of DragonWave. It's just a phenomenal team. We have over 23 senior people who have all been successful in their own careers, who have stitched together a very, very tight group of people. Felicia Hess and Kevin Hess of Drone. They are the originators of Drone. They're brilliant people, and we are honored to have all these people come together, be our management team, and that is really what's going to make this a success. Yes, we have great markets. Yes, we have phenomenal technologies, world-class leading technologies, but it's a management team that's dedicated to each other and to the ultimate objective of making COMSovereign the preeminent U.S. telecom provider that's going to carry the day. Investment highlights is just beating a dead horse. That's on slide 25. You can look at that on your own. If you have any questions, I encourage you, please contact RedChip. Look at the markets. Look at the fact that Comms is uplisting, that we have everything necessary to make end-to-end networks, and we're the only company we know of in the U.S. that can do that. Thanks for your attentiveness. I appreciate you listening to the presentation, and now we'll go to the Q&A portion of the presentation.
Okay, we're now opening the line for our Q&A session. If you do have a question, you can click the question button underneath the presentation window and type those in at any time. We'll get to those in the order they're received. With us today, we have Chairman and CEO Dan Hodges. Welcome, Dan.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you here. We have a few questions that have come in already, so we'll just jump right into things. First question, out of the portfolio of holdings that you do have, which companies are the main revenue drivers right now?
Primarily Dragon Wave, Drone, and very, very quickly BNC and Endura Power beginning in October. Just recall that all of our vertical sales channels into commercial telecom will be going through Dragon Wave.
Very good, thank you. And our next question, does the company have plans to uplist to a major exchange?
Ironic you asked that. As a matter of fact, we are applying either tomorrow or by the latest mid next week with the New York Stock Exchange. It'll be the NYSE Amex is the intended uplist.
Very good, thank you. And our next question, what is the company's current financial position, and is it able to sustain the large revenue growth projections going into 2021?
Well, in conjunction with that uplist, there is an S-1 registration statement being prepared for filing very quickly. And as soon as the Q is subsequently filed, only then could it go effective due to the timeliness of the financials. But that S-1 is to register an IPO offering, a small one, of $15 million. Think Equity out of Manhattan, New York City, is our bank representing us in this regard. And they're quite prolific, having done, probably a dozen IPOs so far this year, even in light of the COVID drawdowns. So we're quite confident about that. That should take place in mid to late August. And in connection, as soon as that is completed, in fact, we're already receiving some term sheets for a revolving credit line of between 20 and 30 million. So we're quite confident with those two in place that we'll be able to attain the projections that we've. I hope that answers that.
Yes, very good. Thank you. And our next question, what does the competitive space look like? I mean, how do you as a smaller company compete against some of the larger, more entrenched players out there?
Well, you've probably heard some of my previous interviews, and it sounds like I'm a chihuahua, trying to bark up a bulldog's tree. But I think the competition, as much as they would like to think and profess to be more advanced, are actually less technically advanced than what we offer. So I think we have a really good opportunity of getting into not just the public networks. And keep in mind, the public networks are the ones that tend to use Nokia, Ericsson, Huawei. Certainly, Huawei's been booted out of the U.S. and it's on its way out of several other countries right now. So we are fairly convinced that we can and will make a meaningful impact in the public network market. But private networks, in our view, are going to represent a much larger opportunity. And in the private networks, we already have a pretty good, quite good reputation as platinum standard backhaul radios. With the BNC acquisition that we completed on Monday, that also gives us the front haul or the edge or access. And not only that, some of the larger companies want to sell lots of equipment, as do we all, of course. But what we've been able to achieve through VNC is a virtualization of almost 75% of the network equipment now can be obviated through a virtualized software core. That's why we're able to, in a small 2.25 pound unit that we can put on a drone, that's why we're able to have an entire LTE Advanced network, everything put together just in that little 2.25 pound unit. Whereas before, you would have to have base stations, your eNode Bs, your IPC, your EMS, all the other pieces of equipment that go into a communications network would have to be installed and operative and coordinated. Now we can do it again, something the size of a credit card. But we believe bringing that technology to the markets makes us extremely competitive, if not far beyond anything the others can put together right now.
Very good. Thank you. Very exciting. A lot of things going on. That looks like that was our last question that has come in. I guess in summary, I mean, you covered a lot of information in the presentation and added some great color here. And Q&A, but just in summary, I mean, what's the key takeaway? Why should investors take interest in COMSovereign Holding today?
I'll tell you. Number one, I believe we're the only end-to-end network provider that's capable of doing everything from the mountings to the backup power supply units to the backhaul radios that take it to the internet to the front haul radios that connect with your mobile devices. Almost everyone else offers pieces of that, but not the entire enchilada. The other item is we are bringing everything under our own umbrella. We will be the only company I'm aware of, telecom related, that will be manufacturing all of its own equipment, and that's intensive. Further, I think you're going to see very quickly that the IP, the intellectual property that we possess, will restrict the entry of many others into this space. We've been very quiet about that, how we've been acquiring intellectual property, but others will have to either infringe or license, we believe, in order to do 5G properly the way it's being portended to be done now. I think those are the takeaways. We're undervalued. You've seen the 10K with the BNC acquisition. We just added another $19 million to our balance sheet. So I think you're going to see when we uplist to the New York Stock Exchange that it should be a very robust market. I'll leave it at that.
Very good. Thank you, Dan. And for our audience, if you do have any further questions after the webinar here, you can reach out to us directly at 1-800-RedChip or email us at info@redchip.com. We'll be more than happy to help you out. You can also sign up for free news alerts by going to COMSovereigninfo.com. That's COMSovereigninfo.com. You can sign up for free news alerts there. There's also investor presentation, videos of previous interviews with Dan as well, and some additional information. But with that, we want to thank everyone for joining us. Dan, thank you for taking the time to share the story with us. We look forward to having you back to share some updates as you have some more success.
Thanks much. I appreciate that. And thanks for everybody for taking the time.
Very good. Thank you, Dan.